Hi, Abby. I wanted, excuse me, I wanted to leave you some feedback on your week 2 writing assignment, your rough draft. Um, I think that you have a lot to work with here. So I'm seeing some things that you could work with for the for the final draft. So to me, it kind of feels like what you're mainly doing in this draft is kind of sketching out your ideas, right? Yeah, it feels very much like a sketch or a plan. So it feels very much like a rough draft. Um, so I think the idea is taking this rough draft and beginning to put it together in a clearer, cohesive narrative. So one of the things that we're going to talk about this week are story arcs, and that is that, essentially the idea that all stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So the story that I think that you want to tell, and I think that this is an interesting one because it kind of has elements of West Side Story in it, and I hope I'm not totally dating myself with this reference. Um, but it feels like you grew up with all of these kind of stereotypes of Mount Vernon, since that was your rival town. But through this relationship, through this kinship with Zach, I believe his name was, it totally changed your outlook and how you looked at Mount Vernon. And so I think that there's something very, we talked about in class really briefly that stories are really universal. I think that there is something really universal about that story, about how, like, relationships can really help us um, well, rethink the way that we view the world, right? And if that is the way that you viewed the world, um, that may never have, or that may not have changed without this relationship, and perhaps that could then open you up to new ideas and new experiences as well. So, in terms of that arc, one thing that I think might be really interesting to do for an opening scene, and this is totally up to you, is starting with that prank moment. So if you could maybe start the reader out in the moment where you are pulling a prank, you and your friends are pulling a prank on Mount Vernon. Notice how that would, like, really draw the reader in, like, oh, what are these young kids up to and their shenanigans. And then you can begin to, with that prank, uh, describe how you view Mount Vernon, and then from there, talk about where that idea came from. And I think that that's where the description of Aurora is really going to come in, right? Even though I feel like you want to talk about Mount Vernon as well, I feel like you have to kind of talk about Aurora too, um, in order for the reader to understand where your ideas come from. And then I think this budding relationship could then show that moment of change. So one of the things that we also one of the things that readers also look for in narratives is that moment of change, right? And I feel like your moment of change is reevaluating how you saw, Mount Vernon, right? You end up calling it your saving grace. So I think a place to begin the narrative that would be really interesting is with those pranks, right? Because you're going to start the reader with, oh, we're going to get that town and they deserve it because they're our rival. But by the end of the story, I think that you're going to feel completely differently, right? That's where you're leading us to. So thinking about how to pace those scenes might be a really good strategy for you. At least that's what I was thinking when I read this. So in this draft, I feel like what you're doing, like I said, is a lot of planning, right? So you're doing a lot of telling. In the next draft, I want you to pivot over to doing more showing, right? So really get into that descriptive detail, really capture Aurora for the audience. What does it look like? What does it sound like? Who are the people there? Who are some of your best friends? And do the same thing with the other characters, like Zach. That's someone that you're really going to need to capture. So what does he look like? Does he have certain ticks or certain personality traits that really stand out to you that could really capture him for the audience? Was there a specific gesture or act that he did that was really solidifying in the bond that the two of you guys have? Those are all the things that you want to include, because that's what's going to draw the reader in and make your narrative strong. So I think that you have a lot to work with here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where you take it. Thanks.